Okay, well, our treasurer has very graciously said he would tie a fly for us. And you're tying the black ghost tonight?
Yep.
And I will leave it to you. Do you want to pass it? You want to tie one first, or
I'll
we
pass them
will
out.
tie along?
We'll tie along.
I'll pass these out.
So I figure since we're in the middle of October, we could tie something scary. And the black ghost was guaranteed to spook your fish. Actually, no, that's still your job. The fly's not going to cut it for you. So this is a fly that dates back to 1927. Was originally tied by Herbert Welch, fly fisherman from Maine. And of course, you can look at it. It's geared towards Atlantic salmon, steelhead, and trout. It's tied on a traditional salmon fly hook. Sizes range typically from a 2 to an 8 in size, and it can be tied on a 2XL to a 4XL. As you get bigger, you can substitute out the wing material. The standard wing is the marabou. You go slightly larger, you might want to switch over to Bucktail. It doesn't sit quite as clean as the marabou, but gets the job done. And even larger if you wanted. There's a 2/0. You can put just some strung hackle on there for the wing. So everybody's got their gear, their package set up. So this is a standard traditional salmon style hook. Make sure I get this level so I don't get yelled at. Looks good enough. You can see it's got the up eye. Also, if you look, you can notice that it's got a loop eye. I don't know if you guys tie many flies on the loop eye hooks. This one's a tapered. Some of them, like Mustad, I believe, have a blunt in there, so there's more of a transition. Typically, if you're tying on one of those hooks, you would use material to fill that in to make a smooth transition with it. The ones with the tapered loop, you don't have to do quite as much attention to that transition, but we will be taking advantage of that. It also gives you a good point to start building your head, because typical salmon flies have a really nice solid head on the front of them. The up eye is more of a tradition. Some people tell you that it helps when you pull your leader, it will help pull the fly to tip down. That may or may not be a big deal. Traditionally, they would tie a knot on here to the leader, to your tippet. It would actually pass through the eye before it was tied on over the back of the fly, something like a turley knot. And that would put your tippet right in line with the shaft. I don't go through all that hassle. I just do a standard clinch knot, or a loop knot would be more appropriate for something like this. Okay, so are we ready to tie? We're using standard 6/0 black thread, and I like to start right at the back of the loop and tie the loop off, and we can just work our thread all the way back, open, wraps to the tip of the hook barb or point. And that's where we're going to set our tail. So the tail, I hope you can see that nicely, is just strung hackle. It's the cheap stuff. I don't know if you can see the logo. You know, this is an ounce of feathers, and it is a ton of material. So basically, we're going to grab a nice big handful for the tail. Probably, you know, that's probably not too much. And you can just peel them straight down the shaft of the fiber, transfer them to your hand there so you can get the right length down. And typically you want it to be about the hook gap long, maybe a little longer. So just transfer that to the top of the hook. Do a little pinch knot down there. That might be just a little long. There you go. And then we can wrap that all the way back up to the open of the loop. All right, you with me on there? Now we're going to put our tinsel on. This is French oval tinsel, medium. If you don't have the loop eye hook and you want to tie it on with minimal bump or disturbance on your material, you can actually peel the outer layer off like that. But we're not going to deal with that because we've got the transition on the hook to use to bury it right there on the side. So I've turned my hook sideways and you can see I'm just going to lay the tinsel on the top and tie it in right in line on the side. All the way back to our tie-in point for the tail. And everybody's good with that. We move on. And we're going to take our thread straight back up to that same point where the loop closes, finishes. And we're going to take our floss, which this is real high quality stuff here. If you go down to your craft store and pick up some yarn, you can untwist it and you'll get 4 pieces of floss for every piece of yarn you cut. Now, this is acrylic, which is nice because it's fairly water resistant. Don't go with the cotton. It'll fall apart and rot. Don't go with the wool. It'll last, but it'll also probably float because of the lanolin. So standard acrylic, any kind of synthetic, and again, lay it right there on that transition point. Tie it in back to your tie-in spot for the tail. And now you should have a pretty smooth base for your body. We're good with that? Okay, now let's wrap the floss. I like to go under and over. So under, then away from me, up and over towards me. And nice touching turns. You don't have to pull real tight. And sometimes the floss will unwind on you, so you might want to give it a twist, which should be counterclockwise to rebuild that round profile of the floss. Oh, and you know what? I forgot one thing. My thread's in the wrong place. So we need to move our thread back up to the loop. No. And as I'm going around, I like to give it just a half twist to keep it nice and round on the floss instead of letting it unravel. And now we come up and we filled in our gap where the head would be starting. And so let's tie the floss off there and trim it off. And now we get to wrap our tinsel. And we're going to go the opposite direction. And you want to spread it out. Usually you want to get about 5 turns on there. you don't have 5 turns, that means you probably have 6 or fewer. The trout won't really care. The smart trout will laugh. And trim your tinsel off when you're done with that. So there we are. Now at this point, you can put a little bit of a thread dam right at the front to taper it down just a little bit. I don't know if that, yeah, that shows okay. There's a little bit of a taper there. And you're going to use that taper for the next 2 pieces. So we're going to go back to our yellow strung hackle. And we're going to put the beard on the front. And again, you can take a nice, decent sized group of barbels off of there and peel them off. I was actually watching Tom Rosenbauer tie the other day, and he had a pretty clever way of doing this. If you lose control of the barbules, he actually leaves them on the stem and just cuts the stem part he wants, ties them in, and then he'll cut the stem away. That's a pretty clever method. I haven't done that, but thought I'd mention that because it's an option. So I'm going to take a group like that and just peel them off, transfer them to my right hand. Now you want to tie these in, and they're going to point down to the hook point, but you don't want to necessarily touch. Leave a little gap. If you've got a rotating vise, you could always make it easy on yourself. About like that, and trim off the excess. And where you tie that in against the body that you just built with the floss, you can see that it kicks the feathers down. I'll tell you, on the camera, it looks like they're pretty long, but they're just barely to the hook point. And now we're getting to the last step. Well, second to the last step, and that's the marabou, the top wing. Now, I'd be tempted to just throw this whole lot on there, but that's way too much. So if you take and hold the top feathers and just stroke them down a little bit, find the center shaft, and pull just like the top third or quarter of the feather up. That's plenty. And the nice thing about using the top as opposed to the leftovers on the side is when you bring the top together, you'll notice that they're all pretty much the same length. So it makes for a very symmetrical looking, almost like it was intentional. Take off those center ones. And the key here is you want the white wing to end about the middle of the tail. You don't want it to be any longer. You want it to be shorter than the tail, somewhere in the middle. So once I've got it in place like that, I'll switch hands. Do a little pinch wrap. Come in and carefully trim back the front. And now it leaves just a tiny little bundle of feathers in the front to cover, and that's where you're going to build your head. So you just load that up with the black thread. It's about what I was looking for. And that leaves your eye wide open, plenty of space, solid head. You can hit that with a little epoxy and it'll look fabulous. So I'll whip finish and call that good. Now, as a typical streamer in a river, you're probably going to be swinging this on a quarter cast. So you're going to cast it downstream across. and then let it swing across the current as you bring it in. Just a very standard streamer retrieve for a salmon. And I find this color combo is actually really good in stained water. When it's slightly off, it really still gets some pretty good attention. The nice contrast, the black, the silver, the white, does a good job getting attention when the visibility is not the best. And of course, this has, you know, this basic platform can be used for all sorts of different color schemes. You can switch it up for different species. If you know you need the Chartreuse, by all means, put the Chartreuse on. Some people will dress it up more of a fancy salmon fly where they'll put the tag end on the back behind the tail, and maybe even put a lead feather over the top, like a golden pheasant crest, just to dress it up. There's a lot of things you can do with this, but this is the traditional one that Mr. Welch tied back in 1927. Any questions? Yeah, Lanning.
Yep. Since you whipped this out so quickly, Denton, I thought it might look nice with one of the other wing material. Do you have any that you could tie up?
The other wing material, I did not bring any bucktail or any other strung hackle in white, sorry.
So when you, and from the looks of it, when you tie bucktail wing on there, you don't bother to put the wing in a stacker. You just tie it as it comes off the tail.
Yeah, you know, the bucktail doesn't stack well. If you had some white, I probably like some elk, or some, well, then you're going to float if you do that.
Yep.
But yeah, so I don't know if stacking the hair on there would be very effective. It's hard to stack deer tail because it's so crinkly. It doesn't want to drop into the stacker very smooth.
No, it doesn't. You got to get all the under hair out of here.
Now,
Trouble.
this was just kindly gifted to me, fell from the heavens. This is Captail, which that'd work. I mean, you could, and that the Captail is more uniform in length. So you could just come up with a small little bundle like that and do it in a very similar manner, and it would end all very uniform. So that would be a nice choice. Where'd this come from? Thank you. Yes.
Can you put any weight on it, or do you have a weight
Sure.
on it?
So Steve's asking about adding weight to it, and absolutely you can. Before you put any of your tying material on, you could always wrap a little bit of lead. I'd probably go with some flat, well, lead-free weight. But typically, that transition from the loop eye, you know, you've got this whole section here that you could fill in, and it would just be more body thickness without causing any real transition issues. Some smaller lead-free wire would fit in there just fine, all the way, you know, as much as you think you need. But again, this one, I don't tie much weight on it, because when you do pull on this tip, it does tend to push the tip down, and so the thing will start to cut into the water just a little bit with a slight tug. So it'll get down there.
And Denton, a lot of the salmon guys or steelhead guys will use a sink tip of, you know, their preferred sink ratio, and then maybe a poly leader or fluorocarbon leader, and that will get down a couple of feet just nice.
And for those of you that are familiar with Scottish and salmon fishing in the UK, will notice they tie a lot on hooks that actually have a double hook. on the side. So it's kind of like that. I don't know how that shows on the screen. But the trick there is treble hooks are illegal. So they'll use a double for the extra weight. So it's a heavy wire, just 2 hooks. And then you've got the gap between the shafts that you can lay your material down to make everything nice and smooth. And those are available as well. Make sure you pinch your barbs on those. Would be very good for bass. Yep. Absolutely. All right, any other questions? Oh, Fred. Oh yeah, absolutely. He's asking if you could use this with a Spey rod. This would be a perfect choice for a Spey rod. You could even, you know, get it out there the distance, even if it were a little larger. So you could tie this in a 2/0, or not 2/0, a size 2 hook, and put the larger wing, like I have shown here with the strung hackle wing. So yeah, you can get this out there really nice with the Spey. And the Spey, again, you could put like a T10 sink tip on there, and that'd be perfect. Yeah. This would be a good one to take to Barothes in the spring. Yeah. Oh. Oh, this is a size 6. So this is just a cheapie off the internet. No penny is too good for you guys. You're worth every one of them. But actually, no, I just found these on the internet and I'm actually quite impressed with them. They are a decent price. And it's a good looking hook. Okay, this one I have in here is a different down eye, but for the up eye traditional style, that's a nice looking bend to it. Nice eye. And pretty good quality. I'm happy with them so far. You have a question, Cal? Okay. Is that Fly Shack? Yeah, flyshack.com. There you go. Yeah. So the people at home are seeing this reverse. Ta-da, magic. You didn't even see me move. Yeah, so now you can see that a little better. Yes. And for those who were wondering about the floss, the tinsel. Yeah. When you see yourself in a Zoom window, if you raise your right hand, you expect the one on the right side of you to go up. So they mirror it to make it do that. But then typically when you see that on your screen, you think everybody's seen it backwards, but it automatically switches it for everyone else. But we had that set wrong. Oh. Yeah. Well, I could get a chroma key green mask and then I could put all sorts of things on. Put a trout mouth on there. There you go. Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you guys. Glad you enjoyed it.